I'm Brandy Cruz. Coming up today on Undivided, if our state's so-called leaders really want to know why UW's president was the target of left-wing vandals, they should look in the mirror. Plus, a Puerto Rican Trump supporter shares her story of being punched in the face by an elderly white woman.
I'm wondering, why would somebody with brown skin support this man?
And Governor Jay Inslee calls us all miscreants for daring to want lower gas prices. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you could support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandy Cruz. You get saucy evening Brandy today. Somebody's like, what? I got asked like 11 times, are you drinking? It's only 6 p.m., people. It's only 6 p.m. The only time I drink on the air is when we're doing a late night special. We had to delay the regular scheduled show today just because I had a event I had agreed to do over the lunch hour, and we don't want to cancel on you on a Monday after we hadn't seen you all weekend. And we have a lot to get to. I want to start with what happened to the president of UW. And this is horrible. Don't condone it, obviously. I'm going to get to some things I think are contributing to behavior like this, but some vandals took to UW President Anna Marie Causey's home and vehicle. Threw red paint everywhere. You've got blood on your hands, etc. The typical pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine, anti-Semitic stuff that we saw at the University of Washington when the protesters took over the quad, etc. And it's the same characters too. Come on. I mean, we know who this is. It's the same characters, the same Antifa type people who do all of this and have been doing all of this in Seattle for some time, and who got away with stuff like this when they occupied the quad at UW, and whose actions were given cover by who? Anna Marie Causey. So now she's the victim of it. And again, I feel bad for her. No one should feel unsafe in their home, and no one should be targeted by vandals or criminal behavior. But she let her entire campus be taken over by these people and Jewish students to be made to feel unsafe for an extended period of time, and didn't seem to wake up to that fact. Two other people who didn't have much to say about it when it was happening on the campus of the University of Washington, but are now just horrified that it happened to the president of UW, are, of course, Governor Jay Inslee and the incoming governor, Attorney General Bob Ferguson. Both of them put out statements about this on X. Governor Inslee said the attack on UW President Causey's home was reprehensible and inexcusable. This was not political speech. It was an act of violence. Washingtonians' rights to protest are strongly protected. These atrocious actions are not. Bob Ferguson said on his official account, I am deeply disturbed by the incident at President Causey's home. Domestic violent extremism has no place in our society. I hope the perpetrators are quickly brought to justice. Have you ever heard him refer to any act of left-wing Antifa violence as domestic violent extremism? And I could be wrong, I will go scour the depths of the internet. I have never heard Bob Ferguson refer to anything except right-wing domestic violent extremism. What we also found interesting in that post on X is it was a quote attributed to Bob Ferguson. They never, at least I haven't seen, put stuff out like that. So we wanted to take a hard line on this, which if it were other people, fine. I'm always okay with people coming around to doing the right thing, but you have two of the most well-known alums of the University of Washington who have been silent on this left-wing extremism, left-wing domestic violent extremism, Antifa nonsense, anti-Semitism, pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas stuff for months and months and months. And now all of a sudden, Bob Ferguson's going to be the next governor, and he wants to pretend that he's tough on this stuff? And so when I saw this, look, yeah, it's horrible, but this stuff has been happening for years and years and years in Seattle, and it happens with such frequency because of people like Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson, and yes, the president of UW. We're in this weird, I talked about this earlier today with a group, we're in this weird place, and we have been for some time, where our quote-unquote leaders don't say anything about left-wing violence and left-wing extremism. And so it's allowed to build and grow and fester and, go unchecked. And then they want to come out occasionally when it's politically palatable and say, oh, we don't stand for that. It's like, you created that. You created the environment that has led to it and that has made it more common and has made it more severe. And none of them are willing to have an ounce of introspection about that. It's like Bob Ferguson. What did I say the whole time he was running for governor? Where was Bob all of a sudden, public safety candidate? Where was Bob Ferguson when the riots were happening in downtown Seattle? Where was Bob Ferguson when left-wing rioters took over 6 square blocks of Seattle? Where was Bob Ferguson when they were lighting police cars on fire? Where was Bob Ferguson when they were blocking critical infrastructure like highways and bridges? He was nowhere. He was silent because that's his base. And oh my gosh, you can't condemn domestic violent extremism when it's your voting base. And so all of this has been, you have this really small fringe leftist group in Seattle that's been doing this for years, from the Occupy movement to the defund the police movement to Free Gaza, and it's the same people, and they get away with it, and they aren't condemned anywhere near what right-wingers would be condemned. We said it all along. Had right-wingers taken over the quad at the University of Washington and been spray painting anti-Jewish sentiments all over the old buildings, Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson would have been there day one, holding a joint press conference condemning it as alums and as leaders in the state of Washington. But they don't do it with the left-wingers, and so then, yeah, of course, the left-wingers think they can continue to do these things, and so emboldened. I mean, they put out their own video, these Antifa types of them. They put out a video of themselves vandalizing our home with all these messages about it. The clock is ticking. President Cossey, how do you sleep at night? Actually taking video and putting it out of the crime they were committing. That's how emboldened they are, because there's never any consequences for them, and there's never even any real condemnation of them. So forgive me, Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson, if you're a little late, and I'm not going to give you a round of applause for coming out and now condemning stuff that's been happening for years that you've been utterly silent about. But the reason I want to start the show with this today is it reminded me of something that happened. I think it was Friday, right? And so it was after our last show of the week last week that I saw, and I had the same reaction to it. So Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is trotting out another one of these efforts to reinvigorate downtown, which I've been a reporter in Seattle for 15 years. I have been through several mayors and several efforts to try to bring downtown Seattle back to life, or deal with the drug crisis and the crime crisis, and paint the boarded up storefronts and put lighting in, and make the bus stops nicer, things to try to make people want to come downtown and shop and spend money and all that stuff. I've been through many of those, and all of them have failed, and downtown is worse than it's ever been. So anyway, but hey, I guess try. So Bruce Harrell's down outside Pike Place Market, and he's announcing this latest effort to try to bring downtown Seattle back to life. And, he's talking about what happened with the stabbing spree in the Chinatown International District, where there was this guy, repeat offender, repeat felon, who went around just stabbing Asian Americans. I think he ultimately stabbed 5 of them. A few more might have been injured. So he was talking about that, and what happens? Well, Bruce Harrell's having this press conference. Well, the old typical far left crowd shows up and starts screaming, as they usually do. Here's a clip.
I would like to take the moment to acknowledge the horrific stabbings. We all hear you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. You are heard. You are heard. Thank you for your advocacy. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the horrific stabbings that occurred last week in Little Saigon. We have the officer, and it's unfortunate that we have to speak over this young lady, David Sullivan. Ma'am, if you have any decency, you would let us honor this officer. You would let us honor this officer that saved lives yesterday. Thank you very much. Hey, ma'am, I'm not killing anybody, but I'm not killing anyone. I don't do that.
Yeah, it's annoying, right? But I'm sorry, Mayor Bruce Harrell is the kind of politician who in Seattle has brought this upon himself. And John Scholes, who's the president of the Downtown Seattle Association, I actually saw him this morning. He was standing next to the mayor there, and he had taken the microphone at some point referencing this lady who was there screaming, "Stop the sweeps, stop the sweeps." And he was saying, look, there was a point in the city of Seattle where we didn't make policy based on the loudest voice in the room. We'd like to get back to that point. And I 100% agree that you have to get back to the point where the loudest person, if they show up and scream, or if they they commit acts of violence and vandalism or block a freeway or take over a police precinct or light cop cars on fire, whatever it is, you don't acquiesce to them. The problem with that is that you have leaders who have acquiesced to them for a very long time. And if you show up and you scream really, really loud, you get your way. Like the anti-Amazon crowd that always shows up and it's like, tax Amazon. And then they ultimately get their way and it's bad for the city. But also, frankly, a lot of what I think are secretly reasonable people in the city of Seattle who have been annoyed with the loudest voice in the room and these left-wing Antifa types for a long time who don't say anything at all. Who, they're not actively encouraging it and out there actively giving them an outsized platform, but they're not saying anything about it. They're not speaking out forcefully and aggressively against this small left-wing faction and fringe because they don't want to be labeled or they don't want to be vilified, or maybe it's not like politically popular in Seattle to speak out against the left wing. Like, God forbid, if you're just right of center, then yeah, you can label them, call them all the names you want, speak out against them and their hateful, vitriolic views. But all the left-wingers who've been actually like disrupting the city for 15 years and actually contributing to bad policy that has killed people, that has made us less safe, all these things, they're just sort of hands off with them in a way I just really don't understand. I mean, I do understand it, I guess. It's politics. It's politics. It's like, okay, anyone right of center, you are evil and bigoted and horrible and you can't sit with us and all of this. But the fringe loony lefties who've been rioting, who've been vandalizing everything, who've been showing up at city council meetings and shouting and threatening and intimidating, like, you keep doing what you're doing. It's fine. We won't say anything. Like, and they all do that. Jay Inslee, Bob Ferguson, and now they want to come out and say, oh, you shouldn't do this. But it's like, yeah, I don't feel bad for Bruce Harrell being shouted down because he's contributed to that environment where that's the way we do business now in the city of Seattle. That's the way we do business, is the left-wingers show up and they scream really, really loud because they think that whatever they have, whatever issue they care about is the most important thing in the world and nobody else should be able to talk about anything else. And speaking of, Antifa was last night. Causing chaos and disturbances again. This one was at, I think we have video of this, I think it was outside the Seattle Library, right? And it's just the same old folks. And I don't get, this is why we need a strong United States attorney in Seattle. Someone who is going to come in and look, you can protest. You can protest. I've never said, and I would never say, you can't peacefully protest and march or whatever it is, but this group doesn't do that. They do not peacefully protest and demonstrate. Their job is to disrupt. They come in there, they harass journalists, they assault people. They obstruct other people's movements. This was, so there was remember the Olympus Spa case? So there's a biological man named Haven Wilvich who wanted to go in with the girls at the Olympus Spa in Linwood. And it was this whole ordeal, and the spa was like, yeah, we can't have that, and women were uncomfortable or whatever, and it led to this whole case. And so there is right now, actually it happened today, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is hearing this case to decide, what happened here, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, although they haven't decided anything yet. But in advance of that, according to Post Millennial last night, there was a group speaking at the library. It was like a women's rights panel. The Women's Declaration International gender-critical feminist group hosted a panel to discuss safeguarding women's only spaces that trans-identified biological men have infiltrated over the past several years. So that's what was happening at the Seattle Library, where the Antifa types showed up, because that's what they do. And that is what they are going to continue to do. Harass, intimidate, assault, bully, until we all collectively just say no. It's that easy. It really is. Until we all collectively, right, left, and center, and even the progressives who might even agree with some of the things these Antifa types push for, but understand that this is not the way we can continue to do business and conduct business. Until we all just say, absolutely not. We're all going to speak out against you. You're not welcome anywhere. We're all going to shout you down when you show up somewhere, whether it's at City Hall or whether it's at an event like this. And until law enforcement starts actively going after these groups that are doing these things, actively trying to build significant cases. I've said it a million freaking times. And again, I don't feel bad for the people like Bruce Harrell who are getting shouted down. You created this environment. It's up to you to help fix it in a meaningful way. But I've said it before, we would never, imagine if we had 15 years plus of right-wing, masked agitators, like, let's say, neo-Nazis, white supremacists. And they came to virtually every city council meeting, or they protested virtually every policy or decision or group or gathering that they didn't agree with. And they took over a police precinct. And they took over a quad at the University of Washington. And they smashed windows in at every freaking Starbucks in the city or every Amazon Go store. You really think 15 years later that group would still be operating within the city of Seattle? Of course not. They'd be in federal prison. There would have been a case built against them at the federal level that would have put them in prison if they were right-wingers doing that in Seattle. But because they're left-wingers, we just allow them this insane control over our public discourse, in our political discourse. And until everyone says enough, it's going to continue. And things are going to, like what happened to the UW president. But again, UW president, Jay Inslee, Bob Ferguson, Bruce Harrell, all upset about this, but you're all complicit in this. So you need to look at the mirror, and then we can move forward from there. I've got to play a clip of Sundays with Subscribers. So if you are a subscriber, you watched Sundays with Subscribers yesterday. We had on a woman named Gina Powell. I've got to play a clip of this because it's just this insane story. So you probably heard her story a little bit in the news. It was covered sort of just at the surface level by media. The day before the election, she's in Edmonds, Washington, and she is waving Trump flags with her friends. Her and her friend Mary. They're out in Edmonds, and they're both not white. I'm not sure about Mary, what her race is, but I know that Mexican. I know that Gina is Puerto Rican. So they're out there in their non-white skin, and they're letting their Trump flags fly and having a grand old time. Not the first time they had done it. And that's when an 82-year-old white woman approached them and wanted to know essentially why they were supporting Donald Trump with brown skin. So Gina Powell, who was ultimately assaulted by this 82-year-old white woman, came on Sundays with Subscribers yesterday to share the story of what happened.
This lady comes around my left shoulder, the older lady, and she goes like right in front of me. And she looks at my t-shirt, and then she says, and look at your face. You should be ashamed of yourself. Look at you guys. You're brown. He's a racist.
And I said, "What? I want to know why you're voting for Trump. That's the only reason I want to know. That's the only thing." And I said, because you're brown skin. I mean, I know that that's what's going to happen to people in this country. And I was a teacher. I hate the racism in this country. I hate how people are treated. Okay? And so I'm wondering, why would somebody with brown skin support this man?
And I said, why would you say that? I said, that's racist. I said, you're the racist. And then that was it. She just pushed me on my chest, and I just put my hands up and I said, don't touch me.
Yeah.
And then she just closed fist and just popped me in my chin.
She punched you in the
face. She punched me in my chin.
Holy smokes.
And I pulled my phone out. By the grace of God, I was just calm. I said, you shouldn't have touched me. And then I called the cops.
No, you can't go home.
No, you can't leave.
I can't go?
No, you're being detained right now. You're not free to leave.
Okay.
Everyone has their point of views.
Oh, I realize that.
Yep.
But listen,
So,
I don't go with that any longer. When we have Nazis and racism becoming the predominant thing, turning people against each other, that to me is criminal, and somebody has to stand up. I'm an 82-year-old retired teacher of 43 years. What else can I do? Nobody listens to me. I'm just an old lady.
That's why you vote, and we do the democratic process. That is what it's here for.
Well, then, is the democratic process gerrymandering and purging the rolls,
goes all
and
sides.
intimidating people at the polls? I mean, this is the party we're up against, and it's criminal. I have spent 10 years watching every speech of Trump's, every speech of Vance's, every speech of Harris and Biden, the whole thing.
Yep.
I've been taking copious notes and analyzing it.
Okay.
And my response is, we are really endangered right now.
Okay.
And I don't understand why people don't understand that.
What was worse for you? Her going, look at you, don't you know he's racist? Or her punching you in the face?
Look at you. You're brown.
How could
You
should be ashamed of yourself.
I am definitely not a racist, but I definitely want to flag people with brown skin or other color skins that hate and realize what's going to happen.
That's kind of racist if you're targeting certain individuals.
I'm not targeting you.
You are. You just said I'm finding people with brown skin. Hello?
One person, and I'm saying to her, and I have black friends who we sit and talk about this,
Okay.
the racism that goes on in our country.
Did you get the sense that like she was unwell mentally, or that just emotions got the best of her? She just really hates Donald Trump that much.
Yeah, I mean, when she was standing in front of me, she just was disgusted with me. You can see it in her face. And she was like, her rage, you know, it was sick. She was, you know, just seeing us being supporters of Trump and dark skin, it disgusted her so horribly. She didn't think she did anything wrong, you know, and I just feel like it's because us just standing there represented like we're being violent, just standing.
Yeah.
That rhetoric that's been spoken.
Well, you'll be arresting all kinds of people if Trump gets in. You'll have fun.
That's really sad, actually, that people can't just get along.
She's going to go to jail today.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm very sorry that this happened to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys being out here. You know, I know you guys have been out here for a few days.
Yeah,
I appreciate
yeah.
you being out here and doing so peacefully and
Absolutely.
doing things the right way. I'm really sorry that somebody decided that they needed to escalate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry too. You can watch that full interview with Gina Powell by signing up undividedpod.com. It was on Sundays with subscribers yesterday, undividedpod.com. Just wild stuff. I mean, so many of the things that elderly woman said on the police body camera, it's just, I'm not racist. I have black friends. Oh my gosh, it's just wild. But, you know, we were, Nicole and I were just, as I was playing, talking about the fact that she says, you know, I've watched every rally from Trump and Vance and Harris, and I've come to this. It's like, oh my God, you have to turn your TV off. And you know, I really believe that she is, I mean, it's crazy the way that she acted, but I don't think that she's like mentally has a mental issue. I think that she's that obsessed that this is what we've like done to people. I think the media is in big part to blame for people becoming that utterly unhinged, where she, and I love that female officer from Edmonds, who basically tells her, yeah, you're being a racist. When she says, I'm not a racist. I'm just seeking out people with brown skin to let them know, because I'm so righteous, this 82-year-old retired teacher, to let them know how dangerous Donald Trump is going to be for them. The officer's like, yeah, that sounds racist to me. So I really appreciate Gina Powell coming in. And again, it wasn't just Gina Powell that was targeted. Her friend Mary as well, who was out there. Gina was the one punched in the face. But I know Gina really wants to go to Trump's inauguration. And I'm like, gosh, somebody out there has got to get her tickets to Donald Trump's inauguration. So I'll post that clip.
Working on it.
I'll post that clip. And then I'll tag the Elons. Take some Elon and Trump and Trump Jr. and all that stuff. But yeah, this can't be where we are. And all these like uber tolerant leftists. It's like, yeah, you're tolerant of everyone except anyone who disagrees with you politically. It's really just wild stuff. But appreciated Gina telling her story. And she also talks about, in that interview, she was at Jan 6, but like wasn't there for the, you know, real troublesome part of January 6th.
She was right outside. She just didn't go in.
Yeah, and she didn't really see what was happening, but like got a visit from the FBI, and nothing ever happened to her because she didn't go in the Capitol, or, you know, she walked down from the rally and kind of just was
She got some good pictures.
moseying around, but got some great pictures, but like got a visit from the FBI. And so we talk about that in that interview as well. It's just wild. All right, moving right along on the show today. Evenings. Love it. Love being with you in the evening. It's just weird. Nicole and I both feel weird about it. It's just like not our normal flow. So we talked about the fact that Washington State, despite all the taxes, despite all of your money that you're giving to state government is facing this massive potential budget deficit. Well, it turns out that that deficit and the budget crisis that our state is going to be in is probably worse than we even thought. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So Governor Jay Inslee over the weekend was in Azerbaijan, of course, on one of his climate missions. So as our governor is jet setting around the world, talking about his number one issue, he's sending a letter back to his agencies at home saying, hey, you need to tighten your belts, which again, the fact that he was in Azerbaijan while he's saying that, jet setting around the world, and then telling his agencies, you need to tighten your belts because we're facing this massive budget deficit. The irony of that is not lost on me. But Governor Inslee, via the Office of Financial Management, they sent out a letter to agency directors across the state and said, hey, things are going to be bad. It says the magnitude of the operating budget deficit is between $10 and $12 billion. Over the 4-year outlook period, this deficit is due to the recent revenue forecasts that were adjusted down and the increase in caseloads and the cost to maintain existing programs. Wow, that's a really government way of saying we spend too much money and we don't budget well. The budget is a work in progress, and we need your assistance to propose a budget that best reflects the needs of our state. To assist with this effort, I direct agencies to propose operating and transportation budget reductions, starting with pauses or delays of programs, and to identify savings options for both the 2025 supplemental budgets and the 2025-27 budget. Please consider measures that will result in immediate savings, such as hiring and other freezes. Okay, I have some ideas for immediate savings, Nicole. I'm sure you know some of them. But look, our state's budget has doubled in recent years. We just in the last few years, you didn't. Democrats in Olympia passed an insane amount of new taxes. Think about it. The long-term care tax is fairly recent, where they're taking money out of every single one of your paychecks to fund a long-term care program that nobody even wanted. That's happening. You have the capital gains tax, which is brand spanking new, that's bringing a ton of money into the state coffers. You have the Climate Commitment Act, which because you're paying more money at the gas pump, because you're paying more money for your energy at home, the state is getting more money than it ever dreamed of via the Climate Commitment Act and the Cap and Trade Program. All of this new money coming in, a budget that has already doubled in recent years, spending more money than ever before, money on things that are absolutely absurd, that in no realm should the government be funding or spending money on. And they're still facing, over the next 4 years, a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit. And I will say, I was looking for it today. I couldn't quite find it before the show. Maybe I'll find it for tomorrow's show. Republicans were putting out press releases warning about this at the onset of the pandemic, that our budget had just bloated and that every time a cent came in that was new, that cent went right out the door, and they weren't thinking about, okay, if we have a little bit of restriction in terms of the amount of money that's coming in, our revenue forecasts, et cetera, that we're going to be in a world of hurt. Republicans were literally saying exactly that. Several years ago, putting out press releases saying Democrats need to stop this tax and spend runaway situation that they're in. Nobody listened to them, of course. And Democrats continue to do it. Oh my gosh, as I said a million times, they will spend any cent that you're willing to give them. And Washington voters have been willing to give them an awful lot of money. This from Washington State Standard. With a $10 billion deficit looming, Washington's governor calls on state agencies to make cuts. And again, okay, you think the only thing they're going to do is make cuts? What do you think they're going to do if they're facing a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit? Anybody? Bueller? Yeah, they're going to try to implement new taxes. They aren't going to make cuts, you guys. You think that they're going to cut all these programs that they just love? Of course not. They're going to use this as an excuse to push through new taxes. In the State Standard, Senator June Robinson, a Democrat from Everett, who's the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee and the chamber's lead budget writer, says of the budget challenge they're facing, they are not overstating it. Because of the magnitude, we're going to need to look at a range of options. Asked if the options include spending cuts and new revenue, she said yes, there it is, new revenue. And here is exactly what is going to happen. I want you to mark 6:31 p.m. on November 18th. Brandi called this, that new revenue is going to be a reduction in the number in who applies, is going to be an expansion rather of the capital gains tax. That is exactly what it's going to be. There's no other option that I can think of, and it is what they've been trying to do this entire time. And voters just declined to repeal the tax on capital gains. And we warned you, what do we warn you over and over? Okay, well, if we don't repeal the tax on capital gains right now, they are going to make sure that the tax on capital gains applies to more people. They had already tried to push a bill that would take the threshold from $250,000 if you sell that much in stocks or bonds or other assets in a given year. Capital gains tax applies to you. And they already tried to drop it in a bill to the threshold from $250,000 to $15,000. So now that didn't happen, that didn't work, but now voters didn't repeal the tax on capital gains, and now they're like, oh, budget deficit, which isn't a budget deficit, it's a spending problem. They have a serious spending problem. It's like a college girl with her daddy's credit card, and the daddy just can't say no. That's what our state is doing for state lawmakers. We just haven't said no. So they have a serious spending problem. It's not a budget deficit. But rather than take a hard look at their budget and what they're spending money on, like, I'm sorry, sending out bids for government contracts for laser hair removal for transgender prison inmates. I mean, that's how much money we have that they can fund things like that. Rather than doing that like every other family would have to do, like every citizen of Washington state would have to do if they're facing a situation where they can't pay their bills, they are going to tax you even more. And they're going to take a tax that they have said up and down is for the richest of the rich, and they're going to make it apply to everyone, even the middle class. And I would not put it past them to change the tax on capital gains to make sure that the sale of your primary home, that profit from selling your house is a capital gain that they can tax. So we called it, and this is paving the path for that. So again, I know you guys know this. I'm not going to say I told you so to you, but I'm going to say I told you so to the people who don't watch the show, who should watch this show, because then they wouldn't be surprised by these things. It's just absolutely unbelievable. 10 to 50, I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine a government getting as much money as they're getting in revenue, still being $10 to $12 billion short. But that's what happens. I mean, I could talk about this forever. That's what happens when, like, Governor Jay Inslee has his right-of-way initiative to remove homeless encampments from along state highways, and they spend $1 million per person to get them out of homelessness. And we wonder why we're facing a massive budget deficit, because we are burning money left and right on programs that aren't working and aren't improving anything in the state of Washington. And now they're going to come to you for more money. So be prepared for that. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. All right, I have encouraged you guys, speaking of budgets, unlike the government, we all have budgets, and we have to budget our money. And when times are tight, we have to look at our budget, as you know, and we have to decide, what do I have to stop spending money on, or what can I cut? All of us need insurance, so it's not like if you feel like you're paying too much for your insurance, you can just get rid of it. But I really recommend doing the First Mark Challenge to see if First Mark Insurance can save you a little bit of money on your insurance needs. Maybe get you I've even heard from people who they got better insurance by going through First Mark and they paid less money, which is a total no-brainer. The First Mark Challenge doesn't cost you anything, and you never pay First Mark Insurance for their services, which is why it's such a no-brainer to me, because rather than doing your insurance and handling your insurance needs on your own and never knowing if you're getting the best price and if you got the coverage you need, have an insurance broker that's been doing this for a long time in our area do it for you. So many undivided viewers and listeners have messaged us in recent weeks. Tanya, Michelle, Paula, saying they had just wonderful experiences with First Mark after doing the First Mark Challenge. Man, they saved Michelle and her husband more than 50% after they got this crazy renewal notice from their insurance. So firstmarkinsurance.com, take the First Mark Challenge today, and you could be our next First Mark Challenge victory story. firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. So there's this hope, of course, that Democrats will look at what happened nationally with Trump's victory and sort of reassess. okay, where are we losing people? Where are we losing voters of color? Where are we losing immigrant communities? Looking at where Trump made gains and reassessing and saying, okay, why were they not buying what we were selling? And first of all, I haven't seen that really in earnest from the Democratic Party. Of course, they think Trump won because of racism and misogyny, which is absurd. But it seems like there are some Democrats who are willing to acknowledge that the party went too cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on some of these issues like radical gender ideology. The issue is that as Democrats who are sane are starting to bring that stuff up, saying, hey, maybe we ought to back off some of this stuff, men and girls sports, maybe we should just consider whether that's really a popular platform. While they're finding the courage to speak out, you have other further to the left Democrats who are shutting them down, who are, despite the election results, saying, oh my God, that's hateful, that's bigoted. The question is, which of those two sides, the reasonable Democrats or the fringe Democrats, are going to win out? Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. So first of all, again, I am always open to anyone coming over to Team Sanity. Like, look, I have personally made a lot of revelations in my own personal political beliefs and my priorities when it comes to who I vote for in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, you go back 5 years, I feel like I'm a completely different person when it comes to my politics. So I'm not going to ever chastise anyone who looks at things they supported, politicians they supported in the past, and given new information comes back and says, you know what, I was wrong. Never going to chastise someone for that. And so when I see things like Representative Seth Molton, who's a Democrat from Massachusetts, he was quoted in the New York Times as a New York Times story, the headline, "Devastated Democrats play the blame game and stare at a dark future." And in this article, they interviewed a few Democrats about, hey, what do you think is going on here? What are you reflecting on, et cetera. It says Representative Seth Molton of Massachusetts, who was one of 24 Democrats who sought the party's presidential nomination in 2020, suggested the party should shift its approach to transgender issues. He said, quote, "Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that." And I think that's very true. I think there are a lot of people, in our state included, on the left, who don't think men should be playing against women or girls, who aren't in support of a lot of this radical gender ideology being pushed in schools, et cetera. But oh my God, they'll never say that. You know how many people, whenever I'm in Seattle, it happened today at this event I was at, they always whisper, "I love your show, Brandy." Hey, Brandy, thank you for that documentary you did on exposing the school districts for all their indoctrination of kids. They always whisper it. Like it's some horrible, I can't be against indoctrinating kids on political and social issues and on radical gender ideology. So yeah, 100%. This is a very true thing amongst Democrats is there's a lot of them who don't believe in this nonsense, but they are too afraid to say it. Well, why are they too afraid to say it? Well, when Seth Molton gave that very reasonable quote to the New York Times, of course, Congresswoman Pria Paul of our state, the chair of the House Progressive Caucus, went on CNN and bashed him for it.
I just find that to be an offensive comment, actually. We're talking about 0.5% of people in the country. And I think that we have to really be clear. There was one party that tried to initiate a culture war, a so-called culture war against a tiny group of people. That was the Republican Party that poured billions of dollars into this. I go back to the fact that we can have an economic agenda that allows people to feel good and safe about their lives and that is inclusive so that everybody gets to live their life out.
Yeah, there's so much I can say about that. And it wasn't just Congresswoman Jayapal who went on and bashed him for the crime of saying, I don't want my girls to play on a sporting field with a male who's going to run them over. It was LGBTQ groups. So now he's anti-gay, transphobe, all these things. So it's hard to speak out. I get it. We were literally protested collecting signatures for an initiative that would have made sure parents have a say in their kids' lives. We were protesting with signs with people calling us transphobes. I get it, that it's uncomfortable sometimes to speak out. And so I appreciate when people like Representative Molton are willing to do it, despite the fact that his colleague is going to get on TV and is going to bash him. But something she said there about, Republicans are making this big deal out of, a population of people that's like 0.5%. You don't think you're making a big deal out of a population of people that's 0.5%? How often do they talk about policy issues through the lens of, or the impact they'll have on transgender individuals? How often do they talk about and push policies to make sure everything's fair for transgender individuals? So you have Congresswoman Jay Paul who's saying, oh, Republicans are obsessed with 0.5% of the population. You are literally obsessed with that 0.5% of the population. You guys won't stop talking about them and giving them preferential treatment above and beyond what other citizens get. And that's why Republicans talk about it so often. And not to mention, it doesn't make any sense. Like, nobody's saying, like, you can't, as an adult, live your life as a transgender person. I've never said that on this show. I think you can live your life however you want to live your life, as long as it's not impacting other people. And when you rewrite Title IX, for instance, to completely do away with the whole idea of it to protect women and to protect women's spaces and women in sports, then you're taking it beyond just impacting 0.5% of the population with your decisions. So it's just nonsense. But then Jen Psaki on MSNBC was also talking about the congressman and what he said. Here's her take on it.
The point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party.
Look, reflection is good, but if that were actually an issue at thousands of schools across the country, it would be worthy of a debate. But there are just incredibly few examples of transgender girls playing in youth sports. And when we see those examples, there isn't evidence that these kids are a threat to safety or fairness.
That's literally not true. That's literally not true.
Jen Psaki.
I mean, there have been so many examples of it in our state alone. Multiple, in Oregon, a state champ, in Washington, a state champ, in the junior kind of Olympics track meet that happened here. Multiple examples of boys winning and crushing the best girl there was. The best girl there was. By lengths, like in track meets and all this stuff. And yeah, there are exampls of it being harmful. Wasn't it a local basketball team that stopped a game because girls were being hurt on the floor by a biological man who was way rougher when you're in there boxing out and stuff? So that's just insane. That's just not true. But here's what I'll say is keep pretending. Keep convincing yourselves, Congresswoman Jay Paul, Jen Psaki, CNN, MSNBC, that this is an issue that's completely manufactured and blown up by the right. Keep convincing yourself that it doesn't matter to Hispanic voters, that it doesn't matter to Black voters, that it doesn't matter to middle-class white voters, and that it's just a product of the right wing trying to find something to divide people over. Keep convincing yourselves of that. Keep telling your viewers on CNN and MSNBC that. And I promise that the results of the 2028 presidential election will make the 2024 presidential election look like a close call. Unbelievable. All right, moving on. We're going to get to some national news coming up in a moment. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. He and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure that the most eyeballs are going to be on your listing and that your listing is ready to go. They have something called Listing Boost Concierge Service where they can come in, they can help you make cosmetic upgrades to your home. They can even help you pay for it up front, which is a really cool service. Mike Boggs, who's a retired Seattle police officer, he utilized the Listing Boost Concierge Service when he went to sell his home of 30 years to move to Arizona.
So the concerns were, is it presentable enough to sell quickly to get the price we want? Wes came out and met with us and we told him what our concerns were. And he mentioned the concierge service and we did take advantage of it. It was such an easy process. Wes is a really great guy and his team is amazing and the communication is great. So the whole process was great.
Yeah, so there's a lot of real estate agents out there. You know, check a few of them out. Ask them what they bring to the table, but definitely make sure that you also give Wes Jones a call, because I think you'll be really impressed with the strategy they have and the communication they have there when it comes to selling your home. Sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. It is simply a better way to sell your home. All right, we were going to talk about this on Thursday's show, and the Thursday show went like 45 minutes too long. Or no, Thursday's show I had to take off for a flight. It was Wednesday's show that went 45 minutes too long. So I want to talk about it today because we discussed the results of the local elections, and how in Washington state, for instance, all the micro districts of all the districts in Seattle, and we're talking about like tiny, like precinct level districts. In Chinatown International District, they had the largest shift to the right. And that's kind of been a trend. This wasn't just this election as an outlier. So you have, I think, this increasing frustration from the Asian American community, also the East Indian community, that Democrats aren't fully appreciating. You know, you just had that stabbing spree in the Chinatown International District. And right after that, business owners down there came out and said, you need to start taking this seriously. What are we going to do? In Seattle's Chinatown International District, business owners there are talking about suing the city of Seattle if they don't do more to help improve public safety. Like, we're paying taxes, we're business owners, and you are so incompetent, we might have to sue you for not living up to your public safety obligations. And what's happening in the Asian American community in Seattle is absolutely not an outlier. There was this letter sent down in Sacramento, San Francisco, in California. So the Bay Area Council, so Asian Americans it belongs to something called the Bay Area Council, were sending a letter to Gavin Newsom, basically saying the same thing that Asian American business owners in the Seattle Chinatown International District are saying you're doing nothing to keep us safe. And it's like, we're absolutely invisible to you. This is just, I'll read a little bit from this letter. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a major surge in verbal and physical harassment against Asian Americans. Hate crimes against the AAPI community increased by 145% from 2019 to 2020 in our nation's most populous cities, while San Francisco saw more than 500% increase in 2021 compared to 2020. While that percentage has started to decline in more recent years, Asian Americans continue to be disproportionately targeted on public transit and in other public spaces in the Bay Area. Unfortunately, fear within the AAPI community remains heightened. They then talked about a couple other incidents that happened. Safety issues and concerns on public transit in the Bay Area, actual and perceived, is particularly high amongst this community. This month, a 54-year-old AAPI woman suffered serious and potentially fatal injuries after an unprovoked knife attack. On a BART train in July, a 74-year-old AAPI woman was pushed onto a train at the BART Powell Street station and tragically lost her life. Does that sound familiar to you? That sounds like exactly what's happening to the Asian American community in Seattle. Not only are they being disproportionately targeted, I mean, we've had so many examples of not only the stabbing spree, but remember the young black men who were out targeting elderly Asian Americans for robberies when they got to the doorstep of their home. They'd come up on them, try to overwhelm them. And I don't think that was ever charged as a hate crime, even though they said explicitly they thought the Asian American community might be more vulnerable or might comply more. And then on top of that, they expressed frustration in this letter that they feel like they're being utterly ignored by Democratic leadership. And that's why they sent this letter to Gavin Newsom. So this is another one of those things where I had just mentioned, like, yeah, I hope Democrats continue to pretend like the radical gender ideology stuff isn't a real issue and isn't an issue that's scaring voters away from them. Because this is another thing where if they continue to ignore the concerns of the Asian American community, where we see nationally Asian Americans are ticking toward Republicans and are leaving the Democratic Party, again, I think Democrats are going to be caught flat-footed on that. And for the record, I don't want any party to care about any specific demographic of people just because it's going to help them when it comes to elections. You know, that's if Democrats all of a sudden turn things around and are down in the Chinatown International District and listening to them more, and it's going to be for electoral reasons. I'd rather have them do it than not do it. I'd rather have them do it because these are citizens who pay taxes and who deserve to feel safe. But I don't know. I don't know if Democrats take it seriously, this sort of flight from the Democratic Party of people who are not white. But this just shows it's not just in Washington state. It's happening down in California, too. Very, very similar. Should I play the Gavin Newsom video? I wanted to play it on Thursday. Is this the most tone deaf thing you've ever seen? So I follow a ton of journalists down in California, because what happens in California often makes its way up to Washington. So it's sort of this foreshadowing of what's to come here. And so I follow a ton of journalists all the way up and down California, see what they're covering, see what they're doing. A lot of good independent journalists in California as well. But anyway, so I saw this. Gavin Newsom, I don't know how you can be so tone deaf. He goes on a little stroll with his security posse and his team through Skid Row. Skid Row obviously is just overcome with substance abuse and homelessness. He's got this nice suit on, nice shoes, nice suit on. He's got his little hair slicked back, and he's got a little latte. And he's just strolling around like with his nose in the air amongst all these homeless drug addicts. Here's a clip of the video.
Now, for some reason, I knew you was going to come to Skid Row, but now you need to see afterwards. You see how dirty these streets is? The streets ain't being clean. And ain't no trash cans. See the red trash cans? The red trash cans belong to the business people. They don't belong to the city. The city just brings out one trash can. They got one trash can.
Governor, do you speak Spanish well? I think you do, right? No? There's a woman back there that was talking about her kids getting taken while she's living in a tent. It's happening every day.
It's always been a housing first framework.
Yeah, but what counts as housing?
Focus away from interim. We have a higher level of scrutiny. Interim housing, that was reinforced.
Our state is not working.
So interim housing isn't being prioritized with the new HAP funding?
The HAP money, the prioritization continues to be a framework about housing. Services, shelter, solve sleep, housing, and supportive services.
I know, but like
homelessness,
yeah.
Interim housing has a role. Rapid rehousing is important. I'm not opposed to shelters, but those are decisions for your local government.
Just walk by the homeless man. Walk by the homeless man who's on the floor begging for money. Is that the most tone-deaf video you've ever seen? What was the point of him being down there? He's literally just strolling through Skid Row in a nice suit with a latte, surrounded by homeless people and tents and drug addicts. Who tells politicians these things are good ideas? I mean, I don't know what's worse. I'll be honest. I don't know what's worse. Him doing that, because that's who he really is, right? Or the videos where he was like rolling up his sleeves and throwing trash away.
Right, for 5 minutes. And then
I feel like actually those are worse, because that's totally disingenuous. Like, this is just who he is. He just bought like a $15 million house or something. And I mean, that's just who he is. I don't vilify the rich, but like when you're the kind of governor like ours who are going to put all these taxes on the middle class and stroll through the homeless encampments with a latte, like, yeah, I'm going to make fun of you a little bit, and I'm going to call you a hypocrite, and I'm going to call you out for that. I mean, Governor Inslee is very wealthy too. And Governor Inslee, I mean, the same thing when he went down to the homeless encampments and he like rolled up his sleeves and he was going to help, and it's like, you look like such an idiot right now. Like 12 years is the first time you've ever been down there. It's the first time I've seen you ever down at a homeless encampment. Not to mention that both of those guys made the homeless situation worse.
Right. And
So-
then at the end there, he says he's talking to the guy about housing, and then he goes, but that's my opinion. It's up to the cities.
Yeah.
So then like just completely dismisses himself.
Yeah,
from
no,
anything.
I don't, in fact, I don't even know why I'm down here.
Yeah.
Maybe his favorite
It's up
coffee
to the
shop is
cities.
down in Skid Row and he just came to get his latte. I just had to play. That's just insane. All right. Let's see here. We'll get to our daily subscriber show poll coming up next, as well as your questions and comments. First, coming up this Thursday, the 21st at 3:30 p.m., Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital are having one of their Know Your Risk live webinars. Specifically, it's going to be reacting to the results of the election. So how are the results of the election going to impact your retirement portfolio, if at all? So Zach Abraham and his team will be able to give you their sort of analysis on that. You can also ask questions if you like. Some people just tune into the webinar and just sort of passively listen. Maybe they're at work still at 3:30, or else you can ask questions of Zach while you're on there. You'll also learn about Bulwark Capital's risk management strategy to kind of adjust to this volatile world in real time so that they can avoid needless impacts to your retirement portfolio. Risk management is Bulwark's #1 focus. So you can still sign up for that. KnowYourRiskRadio.com. That's KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Again, that's happening this Thursday, the 21st, 3:30 p.m. So if you have some anxiety about the election or what's happening globally, nationally, if you're getting close to retirement, maybe you can leave feeling a little less anxious if you attend that live webinar. Totally free. All right. I asked you guys, this is a weird kind of topic for our daily subscriber show poll, but we haven't covered this issue at all. And we were getting a ton of emails about it. And so we were ready to cover it today, and then it was fixed. So we're like, okay. I'm sure you heard about this. For the last 2 weeks, Washington's court system has been mostly down. So this impacted background checks, like people who were waiting for gun purchases. There couldn't be any background checks, a ton of implications of this. And it was some sort of attack, it sounds like, right? I mean, it's sort of still being figured out, but 2 weeks it was down for, which is really significant. So again, we were going to talk about it today, and then it's back up. So we're like, okay. But I asked you in our daily subscriber show poll on Patreon, Locals, and X if you were impacted in any way by the outage, because I just wanted to see, because we were getting a lot of emails, so it's kind of hard to tell how widespread the impacts of something really are. Let's see, over on Patreon, most of you saying you weren't impacted by it, but San said at work their background checks were being delayed. But as a family, it didn't impact us. My daughter received her first gun for her 18th birthday, and her 10-day waiting period cleared just as this was starting. Yeah, lucky. Let me see here. Brandt says, yet another reason why we should not have another hurdle for firearms purchases. Federal system is enough. And you notice, probably not a rush to get that fixed, right? In our state. I don't think Bob Ferguson was on the phone when is this going to get up and running? Right. No, didn't probably care. Robert says, no, but it significantly impacted our criminal justice system and commerce as a whole. Carrie, the company I work for utilizes the state background check system. We haven't been able to hire employees. We heard that too. That was the bulk of the emails we were getting, is people who were either waiting for a job or news of a job because their background check couldn't be processed, or companies that were trying to process backgrounds for people. So it's just a whole mess. Let me see. John said, I answered no, but if it was, I would be upset. That would be a Second Amendment violation. After how much time, What would you do if literally you are preventing people from buying firearms? At what period of time does that become something you could sue over, right? Because 2 weeks, what if you're a domestic violence victim and you were trying to get a gun to protect yourself and something happened to you in the meantime while you were waiting for it?
That's a good question.
Let's see one more. Nicole from Enumclaw. I answered yes, but it didn't personally affect me. I work at a jail, and the court screeners were unable to see some people's previous charges. For example, if someone was booked for a DUI, their option of bail may not have been available right away because there was no way to see if they had a previous DUI. That's interesting. So in my opinion, not a bad thing if they had to stay in jail until they saw a judge instead of posting bail right away. But I also wonder if it had the opposite of that effect, where you had someone you couldn't see their criminal history, so a judge just let them go on lower bail. Because you'd want to pull it up, right? And if you have this lengthy criminal history, that would be factored into bail. And if they couldn't see that, so I think the impacts were probably more widespread than we realize. So just want to touch on that and let you know that has been fixed, apparently, although we have a lot of questions about what led to it and what kept the system down for so long.
If you were arrested and had to stay in jail extra long, let us know.
That seems like a constitutional violation if you had to.
Right.
I mean, So, all right, questions and comments. Old Sub Sailor dropped this on Thursday right before I took off for Vegas. Said, make a bet for me, Brandi. Have a great weekend, all. I did a little gambling. Nothing insane. A little, the Buffalo machine.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo, I like that one.
Yeah, that one's good. The Hangover one there at Caesars is good.
Gonna say I didn't make any money though, okay? I didn't lose a lot of money, but I didn't make a lot of money. Good. Adam Ferris says, the activists own the streets with these things and there are no consequences. What does the mayor expect? 100%. And if he wants to change his tone, although when the mayor left the city council, because he used to be a councilman before he was the mayor, he and I sat down and did an interview, and he expressed frustration with what the city council chambers had become, this very unruly environment. But instead of staying there and trying to fix it and push back, he just sort of quit. And then it's I don't think that they've done enough and been harsh enough. And I just use this example, and I don't mean to be woe is me, but, I've said this to a lot of people, I'm evil in Seattle. I'm an outcast, persona non grata, right wing or whatever. Imagine if they treated these left wingers with an ounce of the disdain they treat me with, or an ounce of the othering. And I'm just barely right of center. I know people want to say I'm right wing. In Seattle, sure. In Seattle, you can call me right wing. But when you look at actually my political beliefs, I'm very liberal on the social issues, very hands off, so more libertarian on a lot of that stuff, live your life. But yeah, I don't want taxes to be too high, and I want to be safe. Right. Does that really make me right wing? Okay. All right. Is that the definition of right wing? I want low taxes and safe streets?
Right. I mean, we have friends that move here from other states, and they came here thinking they were liberal, and they're like, that's not me. This is not
This
me.
is right, 100%.
Yeah.
And so if we, and I hate to put it this way, but like, if those far left loonies were treated as outcasts and not moderates or like moderate Republicans, we would be so much better off. I'm not saying I need friends. I don't need anyone to befriend me in the Seattle political environment. But treating us as like this, can't even do interviews with us. We can't even do interviews. We can't be seen doing an interview with Brandy Cruz.
Or we have to whisper to you that we appreciate your reporting.
Oh my God, all the time. You know how many texts I get from like Seattle political,
Silly.
oh, thank you for doing this. Like, why don't you say something about it? No, cowards.
Yep.
Cowards. Rick Johnson.
I think Harrell, that lady interrupting him, I'm like, make that stop. That is, I mean, it's just not okay behavior. Make it stop somehow. I don't know how, because I don't know what rights. I mean, it's free speech. I get it. But like, demand decency in your city. And
yeah, I mean, in that moment, there's nothing they can legally do to shut her up. It's free speech. But what I'm saying is that they've contributed to the environment where people think that's the way that they have dealt with their disagreements for so long in this city. They show up and they shout.
And you kind of give her attention. Like she got what she wanted out of it.
I would just ignore her.
You
just
ignore
keep talking.
her. You build a wall in front of her. I don't know, but
build a wall.
Well, I mean, of people, kind of block her.
Yeah.
Like stop giving her attention. Stop making eye contact with her. But
it's just wild. It's really wild the extent to which they've fostered this environment and don't seem to realize that.
Right.
Son Miller Triple T, let me see the books. I think he's blowing smoke as a reason to raise taxes.
You know what? I think that's a good point. But then I also think it's funny that with the CCA and they sent all those $200 checks to all the PSE customers and they gave all this money to all these different groups to, like, look what we're going to give you because of the CCI. Can we prove that that was a bribe and that you spent money that you apparently need?
That you apparently don't have.
But you gave it away as a bribe for your vote. And I mean, now you need that money back somehow. So, I mean, I think it proves the case that those were bribes.
Well, the CCA money is specifically for climate stuff. So it's not like they can take the CCA money and say, hey, we're going to backfill our general fund and spend it on all these other things that aren't climate related.
Yeah, but
it just shows is like, 100%, they don't need that money. Right. That is like bonus money for them to spend doling out to their cronies and their allies. And that's the issue. We have so much of this money coming in that's for all these pet projects to please the union and all this stuff while they've like overspent on everything overall. And so we have this big bloated budget, but the money that's like supposed to go to these core basic functions of government, that's what's going to suffer.
But in the descriptions on the ballots, it said, kids are going to die of asthma and like all of these things are going to happen if we don't have this money. And it goes to schools and it goes to roads and it goes to the climate one I think goes to ferries and roads.
So it's specific climate related like bike lanes and
bike lanes, right?
Yeah.
But I mean the way they phrase it, it's just ridiculous.
Oh, but all that stuff's going to be fine.
But that stuff says
all that stuff is going to be fine.
I guess.
All of that stuff, the dumb shit.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, the bike lanes and all this stuff, that the money's fun. The money's there for that. But the waste and what is going to affect the actual core functions of government they should be focused on. But all their pet projects, long-term care, they're still getting that money out of your paycheck for the long-term care that goes into long-term care fund. They're not going to divert that money to help fulfill the core functions of government that are now facing a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit. It blows my mind that this is like a partisan issue.
I know.
You cannot spend money well. You continue to take more money from people. They give it to you in some instances. And you're still facing a massive deficit. It's just, in nowhere in the private sector would it be acceptable. But we're almost forced to accept it when it's the government. Le Pop. That's their name.
Well done.
There is zero accountability for the money spent as well. So on the regular things, get paid for double and triple what they should have cost. 100%. The government's like, oh yeah, you have to go $100 million over budget on this bridge. I guess we have no choice. Deanne Sanderson, only those who voted no on the initiative should have to pay. They can pay my share too. Equity, Yeah.
I kind of like that idea.
100%. Well, that was the whole point is like if Nick Hanauer, Bill Gates, the Ballmers, if they really want to fund the things the CCA funds, so electric ferries, bike lanes,
do it.
Free rides for kids for transit. You have enough money, quite literally, to fund all those things and barely even feel the impact of it. So here you have the richest people in the world, quite literally, and they want you to pay more in gas to fund these things they really believe in. So they spent 26, or it was more like that, $35 million trying to make sure that your gas prices stay high.
And why is that?
And then you could just, it's crazy. And then you could just pay. They could just pay They could pay for free, literally free, because it wouldn't be tax money, be coming out of their pocketbook, pay for every child in the country to take transit for free and be just fine financially. But instead, you want us to pay for it because you think it's a good idea.
Control. They just want
God
to control.
help us. Lord help us. Kevin Grip with a $10 super chat. It's great to have news for 46% of Washington. Hey, we want to be news for 80% of Washington. There's 20% who are never going to bite.
Tell your friends.
I'm getting vilified by the Republicans again today.
Here we
What
go.
am I going to do? I'm so sad. How can I continue?
Well, which ones? They're our friends.
The crazy ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's not. I don't consider them the Republicans.
They're the loonies.
Most of them we like.
You know, they should just get together with the loony lefties and they can have a big crybaby circle where they get together and cry about how, you know, they know exactly what should be happening in this state and it's the rest of us who are fringe and crazy.
Right.
I think they should join forces with Antifa.
Yeah.
Just do a little thing. That's a great idea. Deanne Sanderson, Psaki, tell that to the girls who have been injured or denied their rightful wins by boys playing against girls. Yeah, that's exactly what we said is like, Jen Psaki wants to say that there's no negative consequences of boys participating against girls, which is just...
But that's their thing. Once they're proven, once they've said that doesn't happen, and then they're proven, then it gets proven that it does happen. They're like, well, not very often. It's not. It's not affecting anybody. Like it's not. It doesn't impact anybody. So they just minimize it. If they don't want to acknowledge it and deal with it, they just minimize it.
That's why I thought the interview we did, or the clip we played with the young girl who actually, the 14-year-old who actually lost to a boy, was the most powerful sort of thing on that because it's a child. I don't know how any Democrat could listen to that child in tears explaining what happened to her and still say, yeah, men should be able to participate against women. Makes no sense.
Yes, they do.
All right. Nicole, you hanging okay? 7 p.m. I feel very out of it a little bit. It's a very
feels weird.
Unnatural to be talking this late. Usually at 7 p.m. I'm either
feels
working out or I'm on the couch petting my doggo.
Yeah. Feels dark and spooky.
I've told Nicole, maybe we'll get people to weigh in on this.
Okay. No.
She doesn't want to. I have told Nicole secretly that I kind of want to move the show to the night, to nighttime. But like later than this, like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Nicole is very opposed to this. I think it's opposed. She says it's not a good idea for the business. She just doesn't want to work at night, which is fine.
No, I don't want to work
totally
the whole
fine.
day because then you wake up, work all the way until you go to bed. And I've spent, 8 years of my career working crazy early hours and crazy late hours to make it to good hours in my life.
Now I got the truth because up until this moment, she really thought it would be bad for the business.
Oh, I do think that too, because then everybody that listens in their car podcast, they're all listening to a day late news because we've already done that, I get it. It's good for the people that get to listen at night. But if you're not listening at night when we broadcast, then you're listening to old news.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of reasons.
Still up in the air. No, stop it. Still up in the air. It's something I've toyed with and I've noodled on.
I know.
But I don't know. Noon is just a weird time. But we love having people on at noon that sit and watch at work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I'm not making any changes right now. Today was a one-off. Everybody calm down.
Look at
Nicole, it's fine. Don't be mad.
Stop it, Brandy. You're drunk.
Oh, yeah. Matt says 8 p.m. is my me time. Yeah. Late night Brandy. I don't know. Oh, Vicky. Okay, you guys stop agreeing with Nicole.
I'm with Nicole.
Nicole. First of all, I don't see any of those. Nicole has all these accounts where
you asked for it. I wasn't going to bring it up.
I just wanted feedback. Like, what do you guys think if we did the show at night instead of did the show at noon? Let me know what you think, Anyway, what was I doing? Sanity check.
Yeah,
Goodbye, Nicole. Goodbye. I do take your opinion into consideration, of course.
Occasionally.
This is a team. If you were really like, I'm not doing the show at night, then we wouldn't do it at night.
We could just do... I was trying to think of like some mix, like some compromise, but I don't think there's one out there.
Nicole's decided. There's absolutely no compromising. All right, let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, Governor Inslee was in Baku, Azerbaijan. Why are you laughing?
Well done.
I don't know if it's pronounced Baku, but I just assumed.
I wouldn't. No, I'm complimenting you.
Thank you. And he was there talking to the UN about, it was the United Nations Climate Conference. which he always is all jetting over the place, talking in his, a lot of jet fuel into the oceans, killing the sea turtles or whatever it is, to go talk about climate change. And he had some strong words for those of us who supported the repeal of his precious Climate Commitment Act. Or maybe he doesn't.
Uh-oh. Stop it.
Nicole.
But now we will not be stopped. We will not be slowed down. We will not be retarded. We will consider the next administration as a speed bump on the road to progress. There were these climate deniers who tried to take away the best cap and invest bill in the United States, the most aggressive, the most environmentally just, the most successful, the greatest job creating policy by a state, which is our Climate Commitment Act. And we went to the ballot and we talked about the benefits of the Climate Commitment Act, and the wise, brilliant voters of the state of Washington rejected these miscreants' efforts by a 62 to 38 margin. I can tell you a great success from the state of Washington.
Miscreants. The definition of miscreants. Someone who behaves badly or does not obey rules. Oh, we're not obeying the governor. A person who has done something wrong or illegal. Pretty sure we didn't do anything illegal. One who behaves criminally or viciously. Yeah. Because we wanted you to tell the truth about the Climate Commitment Act and the fact that it did, in fact, increase gas prices. Because we called you out for bribing the public with their own money to prevent the repeal of the CCA. Because we called you out on the fact that the CCA has absolutely no way to measure its potential positive or negative impacts on the environment. Because we want to pay less in gas, we're miscreants in the eyes of the governor. Our governor traveling across the world to tell a room full of people that the people he serves, a good chunk of the people he serves, is supposed to serve, are miscreants. Yeah. Governor Inslee cannot leave office soon enough. That has been your sanity check for today. And also use the R word. I've never seen the R word used.
I think it was in the technical term,
right,
but
the technical
I thought it was
term,
pretty jarring
like
as well.
a flame retardant.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a different word too.
But like he used it like a
delay.
We will not
we will not be delayed. Like, but he used the R
very
word.
strange words. I know the R word's making a comeback, but I didn't expect the governor to say it right there. That's almost more newsworthy than him saying miscreants. Wild. Okay, that has been your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here for this late edition. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. If you have not signed up to support our show already, well, you missed out on that sweet 30% promo code. A lot of people used it, though, and signed up, so welcome to our new subscribers. I don't know, maybe we'll have a nice promo code in the future sometime. Who knows? But in the meantime, you can sign up to support our show. $5 a month without a promo code is still a screaming good deal. undividedpod.com. I'll tell you what, if you sign up, I won't change the show to 9 times. Nicole.
Wow, now you're making promises.
Nicole's going to be out like knocking on doors, making people sign up. All right. Anyway, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. We'll see you back here for our regular live showtime. And maybe I'll be a little more coherent tomorrow at noon. See you then.